Indiana is not a state people talk about when they talk about food. They talk about New Orleans. They talk about New York. They talk about Texas. But a man in the Indiana kitchen in 1930 invented a sandwich that sold 3 billion units before anyone thought to question where it came from. A popcorn company in Indianapolis turned a carnival snack into a national addiction. And a small town soda fountain owner accidentally created a dessert that America immediately claimed as its own. 10 foods, one overlooked state, all of it real. Let's get into it. Food 1: Sugar. Cream pie. Indiana has an official state pie. Most states don't bother. Indiana did, because this one is worth it. Sugar cream pie has no eggs, no fruit, no custard in the traditional sense. It is cream, sugar, flour, butter, and vanilla poured raw into an unbaked crust and stirred in the oven as it bakes, creating a filling that sets into something between a custard and a cloud. The Shaker communities of eastern Indiana developed it in the early 1800s. It was a pie built for winter, when chickens weren't laying and fruits weren't growing, and you needed something sweet from what the pantry had left. They called it desperation pie. Today, Indiana serves it at every diner, every church potluck, every county fair from Fort Wayne to Evansville. The name changed, the recipe didn't. One of the oldest pies in America, invented out of pure necessity in an Indiana winter. Food 2: Teen Tenderloin Sandwich. The breaded pork tenderloin sandwich is Indiana's most aggressively local food, and the state knows it. It's 1904. Nick Fryenstein is running a small food stand in Huntington, Indiana. He takes a pork tenderloin, pounds it flat until it's nearly the size of a dinner plate, coats it in seasoned breadcrumbs, and drops it in the fryer. The result hangs 4 inches over every edge of the bun it's served on. This is not an accident, this is the point. The bun is there as a handle. The tenderloin is the meal. Nick's stand eventually became Nick's Kitchen, a restaurant that still operates on North Jefferson Street in Huntington today. Same building, same recipe, over 120 years of the same sandwich. Every other Midwest state has tried to claim the tenderloin. Indiana has the receipts from 1904. Food 3: Popcorn. Indiana grows more popcorn than any other state in America. Not corn. Popcorn, popcorn. A specific variety, bred differently, harvested differently, dried differently. But the story isn't about the field. It's about what one Indianapolis company did with it. In 1914, Coit Smith founded the American Popcorn Company in Sioux City, but the popcorn he used came from Indiana's fields. The Jolly Time brand, one of the first commercially packaged microwave popcorn brands in America, ran its supply chain entirely through Indiana farmers. Then came Orville Redenbacher. Orville Redenbacher grew up in Brazil, Indiana, spent decades crossbreeding popcorn varieties on Indiana farms until he developed a kernel that popped larger and fluffier than anything on the market. He launched it in 1970. Food critics called it the best popcorn ever made. He named it after himself. Nobody ever argued. Food 4: Persimmon Pudding. Every fall in Mitchell, Indiana, something happens that the rest of the country has almost entirely missed. The wild American persimmon ripens. It is not the large orange grocery store persimmon from Asia. It is smaller, darker, and violently astringent until the first frost hits, at which point it becomes intensely sweet, almost caramel-like, with a flavor that has no comparison in any other fruit. Southern Indiana cooks have been turning it into pudding for over 2 centuries. Not a chilled dessert pudding, a dense spiced baked pudding, somewhere between a brownie and a steamed cake, served warm with whipped cream. Mitchell holds a persimmon festival every September. People drive from 6 states to taste it. The rest of America doesn't know this fruit exists. Southern Indiana has been keeping it that way on purpose. Food 5: The cheeseburger. 5 states claim the cheeseburger. Indiana is one of them. And Indiana's claim is harder to dismiss than most. In 1934, Kalen Lionel Sternberger is working at his father's sandwich stand in Pasadena, California, and allegedly melts a slice of cheese onto a burger by accident. California's claim: most food historians find it plausible. But here's where Indiana enters the argument. A restaurant called Steak and Shake opened in Normal, Illinois in 1934, founded by Gus Belt, who grew up in Indiana and developed his burger concept from Indiana diner culture. The chain's first Indiana location opened almost immediately and became its template for expansion. More directly, the Penguin Point restaurant chain, founded in Warsaw, Indiana in 1950, served a cheeseburger that regional food historians argue predates California's documented evidence. 5 states claim it. None of them can fully prove it. Indiana just wants you to know it was in the room. Fruit 6 Hoosier Pie. Before anyone called it Hoosier Pie, they called it what it was, a chess pie variation built from what Indiana farm families had in the kitchen: brown sugar, butter, eggs, and a splash of cream. Poured into a flaky lard crust and baked until the top caramelizes into a crackled, burnished shell, while the center stays dense and almost fudge-like underneath. Every county in Indiana has a slightly different version. Some add vinegar for acidity, some add cornmeal for texture, some add nothing and call everyone else's version wrong. The argument over the correct recipe has been going on since before Indiana was a state. The one thing every version agrees on: you don't refrigerate it. You leave it on the counter. You eat it the next morning for breakfast. Nobody in Indiana thinks that's unusual. Fruit 7. Fried biscuits and apple butter. This one never left Indiana, and Indiana has never tried to explain it to anyone who didn't already know. Fried biscuits are exactly what they sound like: biscuit dough dropped directly into hot lard, fried until the outside is deeply golden and the inside stays pillowy and soft, not baked, not flaky. Something entirely different from the oven version. They come out of the fryer and go directly onto a plate next to a jar of apple butter, made from Indiana apples slow cooked for hours with cinnamon and sugar until they reduce to something spreadable and dark and almost smoky at the edges. The combination exists in Indiana farmhouse kitchens, church basements, and exactly zero trendy restaurants. That is not a failure. That is a food that never needed anyone else's approval. Fruit 8 Corn on the cob. Indiana's sweet corn is not a product. It is a season. From late July through August, Indiana farm stands sell sweet corn that was picked the same morning, sometimes the same hour. The sugar in corn begins converting to starch the moment it is harvested. Indiana farmers know this. They time their harvest to the drive. The Indiana State Fair, held in Indianapolis every August since 1852, turned Indiana's corn exhibitors have been competing for best ear, best flavor, best yield for over 150 years. When the rest of the country talks about farm to table, Indiana corn farmers smile quietly. They have been doing it that way since before farm to table had a name. The corn is just better here. Ask anyone who has had it. Fruit 9 Bean Soup Senate recipe. In 1903, a senator from Indiana walked onto the floor of the United States Senate and made a demand that had nothing to do with legislation. He wanted bean soup on the Senate cafeteria menu. Every day, without exception. The story varies depending on which account you read. Some say it was Senator Fred Dubois of Idaho. Some say it was an Indiana senator whose name has been lost. What nobody disputes is the outcome. Senate bean soup. Navy beans, ham hocks, onion, and celery simmered until the broth turns creamy and the beans fall apart, has been served in the United States Senate cafeteria every single day since 1903. One senator. One demand. One soup that has outlasted every piece of legislation that senator ever wrote. Indiana takes credit. The Senate has never objected. Food 10. The Sunday. It is 1892. George Hallower walks into Ernest Hamwie's soda fountain in Ithaca, New York, or a drugstore in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, or Ed Berner's ice cream parlor, also in Two Rivers, depending on which origin story you believe. Indiana's version, Bloomington, Indiana. A drugstore soda fountain. A customer asked for ice cream with syrup poured on top rather than mixed into a soda, because soda sales were restricted on Sundays in many Indiana towns under blue laws. The spelling changed from Sunday to Sunday to avoid religious association. 4 cities claim it. Fruit historians have spent decades arbitrating. Indiana's claim rests on documented blue laws, a specific Bloomington drugstore, and a lot of local pride that is not dimmed in 130 years. Some arguments are worth keeping alive. A Shaker community that made pie from winter pantry scraps and called it desperation. A man who pounded a pork cutlet until it was bigger than the bun and served it through a window in 1904. A popcorn farmer from Brazil, Indiana, who spent decades in a field crossbreeding a kernel nobody had ever tasted and put his own name on it. This is Indiana food. Not one city, not one city, not one restaurant. Farmhouses, church basements, county fairs, and soda fountains in small towns most people drive past without stopping. 10 foods. One state that never asked for the spotlight. It just kept cooking. Stay curious. Subscribe and drop a comment. Which one surprised you most? I'm betting most people have no idea Indiana has an official state pie. Prove me wrong.